Hello, this is Dan Nobles and welcome to this tutorial on how to model a simple X-Wing fighter. I'm doing this tutorial in Blender 2.63 just in case you want to know what version of Blender I'm using. And this tutorial is meant for basically beginners on Blender with some experience at least knowing how to use the graphical interface of Blender, but maybe just wanting to do a little bit of practice and take a model from start to finish. This should be a fairly simple model to do. And I haven't rehearsed this or anything, so forgive me, whatever mistakes I make. But let's go ahead and get started. So what I'm going to do is just going to start off with a simple cube. So I'm going to do a Shift A. If you don't have a cube already, do a Shift A, go to Mesh, and add a cube in there. Or you can go up here to Add. And on my Blender, I've changed the Select key to be the left key. You can change it to whatever you want to do in file user preferences. So we have our basic cube here, and I'm just going to do S to scale and hit Y to scale along the Y-axis. And just going to make it like the length, and I'm in top view, by the way. Hit 7 on your keyboard to be in top view. And actually I hit perspective, so I need to hit 5 and go into ortho view. Okay. So anyway, the idea is you want to get a relative size of the length of the spaceship you want, and a relative size of the width and all that good stuff in your cube. And once I have my basic rectangular box there, I'm going to hit Tab to go in edit mode. I'm going to do a Control R and immediately select and select again, and that'll leave that loop cut right in the center, and that's where we want it, because the next thing I want to do is come in here and choose B to select all these vertices here, and hit X to delete vertices. And that leaves us with half of a box, and tab back into object mode. And of course here I'm going to go to modifiers, up where the little wrench is, add modifier, and choose the mirror modifier, so that everything that we model on one half is mirrored over to the other half, so we don't have to model it twice. Big time saver if you're doing something like a car, or plane, or jet, spaceship, boat, all kinds of things that are symmetrical that are symmetrical, and that way it just makes it a lot easier. Okay, tab back into edit mode. And what I want to do is I want to give myself some loop cuts in here that is going to allow me to do the type of model that I want to do. So I'm just going to hit Control R, and I want 2 loop cuts here, so I'm going to roll the mouse wheel and then select, and that will give me the 2 loop cuts that I want there. Go 3 to go into side view, Control R, and I'm going to mouse wheel and I'm going to go ahead and do 4 here. Might be a little bit too much, but just for right now, that's what I'll do. And just thinking about the side view, the only thing that really is going to kind of stand out here is I'm going to have a cockpit, so I'm going to do a Control R here and select it, and then you can move it around if you want to. And I don't know, I'm going to put it towards the back, and I'm going to have it right there, and Control R again, and I don't know, let's put it right there. So that gives us this area right here to sort of be our cockpit area. Okay, so we know that the shape of this ship is just not there yet. It's just a block right now. So let's go ahead and deselect all these vertices and just S to scale this down. Oop. Control Z to undo. The reason that it's separating there is because I don't have clipping turned on my mirror modifier. So you want to turn on clipping so that your vertices stays connected to the vertices in the mirror modifier. So S to scale it down, and I think I want to SX to scale along the X axis a little bit, bring that in. Maybe something like that. Okay, and then 3 to go into side view, and I think I even want to maybe pull this down a little bit. Yeah, maybe something like that. Okay, so we're starting to get the shape a little bit, but we got a little ways to go, of course. So since I'm in vertex mode, I'm gonna hold down the Alt key and click select the line here. It selects your entire edge loop there. So I'm going to go into top view, hit the 7 key. And another tool you can use is the C. This is a select tool, and you can use the C to hold down the select key and select vertices, or you can use your right mouse button and deselect. So it comes in very handy. And I want to deselect, and you hit your right mouse button, or your whatever your mouse button is to not select something, to get out of the C mode, the C select tool. I think you can also hit escape, but anyway. So I need that vertice there. What I want to do here, basically, what I really want to do is I want to select all of these edge loops. So I'm going to Shift Alt, select that edge loop, select that edge loop, select that one. Okay, and I don't want to pull out these vertices, so I'm going to use my C and right click, right drag select there. And same thing with over here. I don't need that. I don't need any of these end ones. I only want the side ones. So if I go 1 into front view, then I can see what I'm doing. And I pull that out. And what I'm really looking at right now is I'm looking at how far this part right here is coming out, and this part right here. So kind of get an idea of what it needs to look like. So probably right there is what I want. So now I want to deselect the top and bottom ones. So I'm going to hit my C and use the middle mouse button to deselect these. Deselect these. Okay, so now I only have that, the very side there. And by the way, the side is also what I'm going to be using. Well, I was going to say I was going to be using them for the wings, but we're not there yet, so we'll see what we do. So back in the front view, just going to pull this out a little bit more. Just make it kind of like round it off a little bit there. Okay, so just getting the very basic geometry here of our ship. And let's go ahead and see if we can come up with a cockpit, or at least a window for the cockpit. So I'm going to go back into face mode here, and just selecting these, those 3 faces there. And of course, if you just drag them up, you're going to mess up your entire geometry. Control Z to undo that. So I'm going to use the E key to extrude. And just going to extrude up a little bit. Let's go into side view so you can see what it looks like. And SY to scale along the Y-axis. And I'm just going to pull this whole thing over a little bit. Okay, so that's sort of like the cockpit area. And it looks kind of funny right now, just stopping like this. Looks like kind of a strange truck look or something, truck cab. But I think what I want to do is maybe back here is try to put maybe like a little engine compartment, or if you were thinking of Star Wars, it would be probably where R2-D2 sits or something. But I'm going to probably put something back there, or at least raise this up, so I'm not too worried about it and ending abruptly there. And as we go along, if you think of something different that you want your design to be, of course you go for it. And this front still looks a little bit too wide to me, so just going to select all these, scale along the X, actually pulling in these vertices more than I really want to. Let me see if I can get them separated out a little bit. Oh, I see what I did. I somehow managed to grab all these vertices and move them when I did that. And that's definitely not what I wanted to do. So I'm just trying to move them back into place. Just see, using the C tool to deselect some of these as I move them out, line them up. Yeah, every time you screw up, you get more practice. I mean, what can you do? And basically I'm just trying to line them up so they're straight. So that's more what it should look like. And now I go into 7 top view and select all of them and do the SX to scale, scales like it should, or at least more like it should. Okay, now let's go ahead and see if we can create some wings here. And we got to think about how wide we want the wings to be and where we want them to end. So if we go into face mode, we could either extrude off of this area, which would be really not wide enough, or both of these areas, and that means that the wing's going to be all the way at the very end of the craft, which I don't particularly want. So what I'm going to do is just hit Control R, put in a loop cut, and if you just select once, of course you can move it around and decide how long the wings are going to be. I think, probably pretty much in the middle there is going to be fine. So go back into face mode, and then you can use that width as the wings. And we're going to have, it's going to be like an X wing, so I'm also going to select these. Okay, tell you what, before we do the wings, just before we do that, let's go ahead and save the file. Always a good idea. I'm just going to call mine X-Wing. And then to do a quick save as you're working along, you can just do a Control S, hit enter, and that saves it. Okay, so we made our loop cut there, and we want to use these 2 sections for the wings. So hit E to extrude, and as you can see, it's automatically extruding along the X axis, which is what we want. And bring it down. If we go 1 in the front view, we can see, is that long enough? Is that the length that we want? And yeah, it's not bad. Go to 7 top view, and we can do SY to scale along the the Y axis, and then scale that down. And now we can see from the top view, actually looks like not really that long, are they? So you just pull them out a little bit more there. Okay, So I'm going to hit C and my middle mouse to deselect those faces, and I'm just going to pull that up there. Actually, let's go into the one front view and C to select those faces, and kind of looks like an X-wing now, sort of. Okay, so what can we do next? Well, we can get kind of fancy with it, and we can say, you know, I want my craft to really look aerodynamic and cool, and just hit A to select, and hit A again to deselect everything, and tab out of the edit mode to go into object mode, and go to your modifiers, choose add modifier, subdivision surface, and you can see immediately it's got this really more aerodynamic, more curved look to it. And you go over to your views, and you can update that to get as smooth as you want there. But you don't want to go too high there, because your render times will go up, and the amount of geometry that you're putting in there is just increasing exponentially. But what subsurface does is it takes all this geometry that you did, and it divides it using this Catmull, however it's pronounced. I know that's not how it's pronounced, but Clark algorithm to add in geometry in between your geometry. And that's why you can't really see it in this video, but there's a lot of little subdivisions. If we go to Z and go to wireframe view, you can see it very clearly, all the different subdivisions that you've done. So, and Z out of that. So right now, you can see that your ship, if you look up here to your number of faces, you have 2,976. If you turn that off, you only had 186 faces. So you can see how much you're multiplying your geometry very quickly when you do that. Another thing that you can do once you turn on the subsurface is hit T, go over to your Object Tools menu, and choose Shading Smooth. And you can see that gets rid of a lot of that geometry that was visible there. And that way you don't have to turn up, you don't have to go into any further divisions really. So kind of cool looking, but for an X-wing, yeah, not really what we're wanting. So I'm gonna just X that off, and as you can see, the smooth doesn't work very much on the entire ship surface. So I just turn it back to flat and hit T again to close that menu. So what can we do now with our ship? Let's tab into edit mode, go into 7 top view, and I think I'm just going to B select these faces and just pull these wings back a little bit. I think that's really, whatever you think is best for that. It's just a preference thing. And let's go up to the front here. I'm going to C select all these faces. Okay, and I'm going to extrude, E key, scale it down a little bit, E extrude again, just give it like a extrusion there. The cockpit looking kind of funky right now, so if we go into our edit mode by using the tab key, let's go into vertex mode and just select all these vertices along here, and SX to scale on the X, and I think I have median point. Actually, I don't want that one. And I'm just scaling in the X direction just to give that kind of an angle to the cockpit area there. Go back to face mode. Select these faces here. I'm going to do a E extrude, S to scale, and E to extrude again. Oop. Just going to want to extrude in actually. Not too much, just enough to give it like a little edge lip there. And same thing for this, unless you don't want a window there. E to extrude, S to scale, E to extrude, and going to extrude in a little bit. Actually, that extruded in too much. Okay. And I don't really want a window on the back, but you can do one if you want to. Actually, on the back, just to have something fill in the space here. See how when I select these faces, it's actually selecting the one on the bottom, which I don't want. If you run into doing a model that's getting more and more complicated, you can choose this button here, which is occlude geometry, and that way you're only going to select your visible selection, your visible faces here. So I'm going to deselect everything, and then I can just select all these without worrying about having selected something underneath. And so I'm just going to E to extrude that, scale it down a little bit, and then I'm going to E, extrude it upwards. And just to match the cockpit a little bit, I'm going to scale along the X, SX, and E to extrude, scale it, E to extrude, E to extrude, S to scale, E to extrude, scale it. So just making a little, I don't know, excess engine area here that you can add detail to later on. But just something there that, doesn't look like that completely bizarre drop off there from the cockpit. And so now we have the engine area here that we need to do something with. So I'm going to select all these faces. Oop, already had some selected here. And E to extrude. Just take it down a little bit, and E to extrude. And just bring it in a little bit there. Actually, that's quite a bit, but I think what I want to do, well, let me try something silly here. I'm going to turn off clipping on the mirror modifier and do E to extrude and scale it down. And you'll notice that since I turned off the clipping, I'm able to extrude away from the mirror there. And E, extrude these forward a little bit. How much? Maybe like that. Okay, and just out of habit, I turn clipping back on because you'll go to extrude, do something later and you'll want it to be on, and then it won't be, and you'll be mad. So anyway, E to extrude and scale it down, and E extrude in. So kind of a cheap way to create some thrusters here. These are pretty crappy looking, of course, but another thing you can do is just create a cylinder and put your thrusters in there, and you can do a really good job on your thrusters that way. You can even, I don't know, I'm doing a Control R, put a edge loop in here, and mouse up to make two of them. SY to scale them together a little bit, and then let's do a E to extrude. Actually, let me back up, Control Z. What I want to do is I don't want it to size or scale along the y-axis. So just do a E to extrude and do Shift Y. And when you scale it, oops, what the heck did I do? SY. Oh, I guess I'm getting tired. Let me go back. SY. Okay. Now I'm going to scale it and Shift Y. Oh yeah, I am scaling. Extrude it first, and then scale it, Shift Y. There we go. I don't know what I'm doing there. I'm just putting like some extra detail in there, which doesn't really make it look any better at all. But if you did a lot of loop cuts in there, maybe you could put in a lot of ridges in that area. Okay, so what are we missing here? Kind of looking at the size of the ship to see if it's really the kind of size that I want it to be, but yeah, it's not bad. Okay, and you can do, if you start adding some detail to it, you can do things like, let's go into face mode, select these two, E to extrude, scale it down, and I don't know, just do a E to extrude, bring that in, E to extrude, scale it down, E to extrude, bring it back up a little bit. Yeah, that's a very simple, sort of detail, but you get the idea. I mean, you can do different things to get a little bit more detail into the ship. Probably what I would do at this point, actually I would back up a little bit. Okay, back to where we just extruded it downward. You can put in a loop cut. Go back to face mode. Select these faces. And you can do things like change your pivot center here to individual origins. Hit T and extrude individual and scale it down a little bit and then extrude them upward. And as you can see with this one over here, it just gives a little bit more detail than what we had. And remember to go and turn this back to median point, or you're going to curse yourself later because you're going to be trying to size something and it's not going to size correctly. Okay, so you can, you can start adding as much detail as you want using those same methods. And then if you want to add some material to it, we just go up to material here and we're going to do new, and this is going to be our base material, and let's not get crazy here. I'm just going to, I don't know, make it slightly blue. And for our cockpit windows, we want these to be like glass, sort of. So do a new material, and we'll just call this glass. And we'll give it like a yellowish color. And turn on transparency. And just bump up the transparency here. And you can toy with these settings. And go ahead and make your material like this Mini Art Wardslow. Gives it a lot of specularity, which is good for glass. Turn on mirror, because glass is reflective, and give it some reflectivity. Not too much usually, but good amount. Okay, and I didn't assign it to my mirror, which we needed to do. Assign it to the windows, I mean. Assign. Okay, and if you want to, you can come back here, select your fuselage area. Okay, new material. Let's call this black. And assign that. Okay. And I should have a camera here somewhere, but I do have one, I believe. I guess I don't. So add camera. And I'm just using G to move it around. Go into side view, and try to position it to where it needs to be. Go into 7 top view, and quick way to get the view to show up in your camera perspective is hit Control 0. And of course, if you happen to be in a different view, like if you're in side view, you can hit 0 to change to the camera view as well if you've already got the view. It's good if you have different cameras. An easy way to select the camera that view up here, or change to the camera rather than going here, going to cameras, and set or go to active camera. You can just do your Control 0 and it'll switch it over there. So anyway, I would just want to move it up a little bit. Maybe rotate it down. Hit F12 to render, and don't see anything because I don't have a sun or a lamp or anything. So add lamp, sun, and just give it some angle there. By default, the energy is 1, which is very high usually, so I just usually bump that down to 0.6. And there we have it. We have an X-Wing fighter, sort of. Which, like I said, you can just tweak the heck out of to make it look better, give it more detail. You can come in here, extrude, scale that down, maybe scale it into Z. No, you can't do that. But you can probably do Alt S to scale. Yeah. Okay, it's not doing what I want it to do, but that's okay. Just do E and you can scale it in. Things like that just to give more detail. In your world view, take it off this drab gray. Maybe give it I don't know, some other kind of background. If you turn on all this, you can see how it's changing there in the preview. That's going to be your background. You turn on ambient occlusion. Sometimes can give it a pretty nice look. Let's see if smoothing the model. Yeah, I think it's going to make it look crappy, but we'll take a look. Yeah. So you can kind of see, oh, let me turn that back off flat. Kind of see how you can make a simple X-Wing fighter. And like I said, maybe you want to go back and turn subsurface on, make it look more aerodynamic. If you do that, go ahead and turn on your smooth shading so it'll look better. And let's render that. Not too bad, doesn't look too bad. And but you can see how when it's smooth, I mean, we can really smooth it up, but again, you're really bumping up your geometry right now. It's at over 51,000 faces. But it really depends on what look you're going for and how complex you want your model to be. If you go back down to a lower subdivision, you can do things like go into the geometry and start adding loop cuts, Control R, and let's see if we can get it to an area that I'm trying to get to. And what that will do is make the model not so smooth, but give the model hard edges in places that you want the hard edges to be. Like if you did it along here, I could move up close to that other edge, and once you do that, you can see how you're getting this edge more delineated here. And with the subsurface turned on, you can also see that you pretty much messed up your port window here. So you can add an edge loop in here and shore that up. Add one in there. It just depends on what, what kind of look you're going for. Almost looks like a car cab right there or something. Anyway, you kind of get the idea. Another thing that you can do to make your lines more defined instead of adding these edge loops, because every time you add an edge loop, you're basically, if you're in the subsurface modifier, or even if you're not, I mean, you're doubling your geometry. So you're really adding a lot of geometry to your model. So another way to get around that, say if this edge right here we want to be really sharp, go into, make sure you're in edge mode and just select the edges, and you can do a Shift E and then just pull that out, and that changes the definition of it. It's called edge crease, and it goes from, I think, from 0 to 1. You can pull that, 1 is all the way out. So when you pull that out, you have that sharp edge crease. To get rid of that, you do a Shift E and you can go back in, or you can do a Shift E and do a -1 on your nubpad and hit enter. That's just an easy way to take it back to what it was. So now if we render it, after a few things that we've done, you can see that the cockpit is a little bit more defined. and we have this edge running along there that we put in, things like that. So, I mean, you can think about think about what you want your ship to look like and go through and make those kind of changes. Like something I probably would want to do is, since I ran those loop cuts along the cockpit, they continued on all throughout the wings and everything. So it affected these, which is fine, but it didn't fix these over here. So really need to add another one in here and another one in here. That's Control R to add the edge loops to make them match, what we did really by accident along the cockpit. But actually, that way it even looks better than what it did. Just trying to think of other tricks and things that you can do to make your life a little bit easier. If you decide that you put in an edge loop that's really not necessary and you want to get rid of it, then go into vertex mode and do Alt select on the edge loop. So you're really selecting this loop that's really going all the way around the cockpit, and you say, well, I really didn't need that, so it's taking up extra geometry. You can hit X to delete and choose just delete edge loop, and that takes that away and takes away tons of geometry and makes your model easier to work with. And kind of a nice way to clean up geometry. Another thing you can do with edges, which is kind of nice, is I don't know. Say we wanted to add a loop cut here. Okay, and we add one there because maybe we're going to break apart these panels or something. And we have it there, and we say, oh, I didn't really want that there. That's not how I wanted it. So, you'll go along and try to select this whole thing and move it over or whatever. And let's do it. Let's go Alt, select it. And you say, okay, it's on a curved surface now. So it's like, okay, I have to try to move it. I can use the G key and try to move it, but you're not going to be exact and you're not going to get it the way you want. Or you can use the manipulators. You're definitely not going to get it where you want because those are all only in these explicit axes that they're in. So just do a Shift E. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Control E to go into your edges menu and do an edge slide, and it'll slide it along the geometry perfectly. So that's another really nice trick you can do when you're working on your models. And I'm going to do Control Z and get rid of that because I didn't want it. So the other thing is once you have all the geometry done how you want it on both sides, then of course you can go in and apply your mirror modifier. What I usually do is I keep different versions as I'm working, so if I make some major mistake, I can go back to the previous version. So I would do something like file save as, come along here, and I call it V2 for version 2. And once I have version 2, I say, okay, well, I think I've got it the way I want it to look. I'll apply the subsurface, I'll apply the mirror. Actually, probably should have applied the mirror first there, but anyway. So now, the mirror is applied. You can't go back and make changes on one side that'll affect the other anymore. But once your mirror is applied, you can do other things to your model that you may need to do where maybe you don't want it to affect both sides. Maybe you want to come out to the side here and have a gun or something that's coming out only on one side. I mean, who knows? But that is pretty much it for a basic X-Wing fighter, just covering some very simple techniques of modeling. Not the greatest looking thing in the world, but at least you get the idea. And if you model something like this, of course, if you have reference images and an idea in mind, then you can, go in and create something really cool. Now, if you really want to get ambitious and design a very nice, very detailed spaceship, check out Andrew Price's spaceship tutorial here on YouTube. It's quite a complex tutorial, but it's really good. It's over 2 hours long, but it's you're making something that's really really nice. But it's not for beginners. It's you definitely have to have some Blender experience to follow that tutorial. So thanks for watching, and hope to see you soon.